Welcome to Reflecting History. I'm assuming that if you're listening to this episode, you're thinking about giving the show a try, or you just want to know a little bit more about it. So this is actually my second attempt at this introduction episode. So just as the events of history evolve and become something more, this podcast has evolved over time. It's become something bigger, I think, than I originally envisioned, which is fantastic. That means people are out there listening and kind of the ideas have become bigger and better. So I wanted to make sure that this evolution is reflected in the introductory episode. First and foremost, this is a history podcast that chronicles the triumphs and tragedies of the human experience. It's become apparent to me that all too often the human element of history is neglected or just not mentioned at all. People have a misguided idea that history is just a string of events that happens in the past. So this podcast will not be a show that goes into tiny boring detail after tiny boring detail and, name after name and date after date leading to event. That's just a string of facts. So I call this historical minutiae. This has no analysis built in. There's no application to the real world. Again, it's just a string of facts. And I've also found that people talking about history can go in kind of the opposite direction, with people on all sides of the spectrum loudly yelling things in a pretty aggressive and unreasonable manner, most of the time with little evidence or support. This podcast won't be either of those things. So how does history reflect back and give us insight into ourselves? How does it give us insight into human nature, morality, psychology, philosophy? These are some of the big questions that this show seeks to answer by telling historical tales that are often undervalued or ignored. The bottom line is that the idea is to have a podcast that is well-researched, reasonable, and hopefully entertaining, and hopefully you get something out of it. It has been great to get feedback from a lot of you, and I would like to continue doing that. So if you have any feedback, comments, criticisms, things of that nature, you can email me at reflectinghistory@gmail.com with any questions or comments. You can also search me on Twitter, find me there at reflectinghist. So you can find me there. You can also go on the website at reflectinghistory.com. So all that being said, I know it's a crowded podcast ecosystem these days, and I'd just like to say thanks for giving the podcast a try, and thanks for listening.